So we are on 4:6 of Esther. And we just left off where Haman, Haman was trying to get all of the Jews annihilated. But Mordecai is just beyond himself. And Queen Esther is trying to find out how she can help. So that's where we left off. So, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries to destroy the Jews. Because Haman wanted to wipe out the Jews completely. He was mad at Mordecai, so he wanted to wipe out all the Jews, not just Mordecai. He also gave him a copy of the written decree of the destruction which was given at Shushan, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her, and that he might command her to go into the king to make supplication to him and plead before him for her people. So Hathath returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Esther spoke to Hathath and gave him command for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know what any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king, who has been called, he has but one law: put all to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So they told Mordecai Esther's words. And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, "Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" So he's telling her that she's a Jew and she's in trouble too if the king finds out. Then Esther told him to reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So she tells them to go fast, basically go fast and pray, and for 3 days. And then she's going to go and she's going to talk to the king, and if he takes her out, he takes her out. That is her fate. She's very brave. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther commanded him. Now it happened on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house, while the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, facing the entrance of the house. So it was when the king saw Queen Esther, standing in the court, that she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in her hand. And then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And to the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, up to half the kingdom." Telling her, "I'll give you everything you want, up to the half the kingdom. You can have half the kingdom if you want." So Esther answered, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." So she's inviting Haman to the king's and her dinner. Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, that he may do as Esther has said." So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. At the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom it shall be done." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and request is this: if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and it pleases the king to grant the petition and fulfill my request, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I have prepared for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said." So Haman went out that day joyful and with glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. He was proud, and he was angry because Mordecai wasn't scared. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called his friends at his wife Zeresh. Then Haman told them of his great riches and the multitude of children, everything in which the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the officials and servants of the king. So he was bragging. Moreover, Haman said, besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am again invited by her alongside the king. So he was all excited because he thought it was a good thing that he alone was invited to dinner. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate. So in other words, it don't excite him as long as Mordecai's there. He just don't want him to be there. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on them. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet. And the king pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. So he made gallows because he was ready to hang Mordecai. That night the king could not sleep. So one commanded to bring the book of the records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told Abagtha and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, that doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on the king's Ahasuerus. So the king was reading his books and remembered that Mordecai saved his life. Then the king said, what honor or dignity has bestowed on Mordecai for this? And the king's servant was attended him, said nothing has been done for him. He said, how did we honor him? Did we honor him? He said, no, we didn't do anything. So the king said, who in the court? Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that the kings hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for them. The king's servant said to him, Haman is there standing in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king asked him, what shall be done for this man who the king delights in honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, whom would the king delight to honor more than me? Thought he was going to honor him. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor. Let a royal robe be brought, which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let his robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may arrive, the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. And Haman thought it was going to be him. Then the king said to Haman, hurry, take this robe and this horse, as you suggested, and do so for Mordecai, the Jew who sits within the king's gate. Leave nothing undone of all that you have spoken. So Haman took the robe and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and led him on horseback throughout the city square, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights honor. So Haman had to honor Mordecai on the horse and parade him through the town. Ooh, he was mad. Afterward, Mordecai went back to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house mourning with his head covered. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and his friends everything that had happened to him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him. We left off with 6:14, and there will be another part 4.